you actually started doing movies while still in college. So I think your first movie role was a movie called Interface.
Yeah.
Which is a science fiction comedy horror film where you play punk number one.
Yeah, I had a long, wonderful career in Dallas-Fort Worth as punks. I was like punk number 2 in the Dallas series for one episode. I used to, whenever I had an audition, I used to keep a switchblade and a red bandana, in my car. I'll cut you, man. Because those were the roles I was up for. But what was wonderful is that that film was actually produced, written, directed by Andy Anderson, who was our film director, film professor at the University of Texas at Arlington. And he went and he raided the theater department, and it was my first film. It was very weird. And much like Werewolves, which was just out in theaters and is streaming now, my face is the first face on screen, like boom, they're big. And like that play back in the 6th grade, I saw that a close-up of me up on the big screen at the premiere, and I just went, this is what I want to do, And it's great because I went back recently, about a year ago, to actually teach a week-long residency at UTA. And like Andy, because of what he had done in the past, I taught not just the theater, students, but the musical theater students and the film students, and tried to bring them together and go, guys, you're all on the same team. You can all help one another. You can network. If young film directors and writers need actors, go to the theater department. Theater department, go help the film guys, because this will teach you things that you won't get on stage. So yeah, man, it's interesting that a lot of things that I was doing way back when are still very true for me today.
Well, you do that, university-produced movie, Interface. You ended up on a TV show called Time Bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we lovingly called it Stink Bomb, in and around DFW. But I tell you what came out of that. It was wonderful, man. Yeah, I was studying and eventually teaching with Adam Rourke at a thing we called the Film Actors Lab, and I was one of the first students, one of the first 6, and so eventually ended up, because I had so much theater training, ended up becoming a teacher, but also helping Adam to develop the curriculum that would marry what you learned in theater with what he knew from film. So really studying film technique. And I was an extra in Time Bomb. And it starred Morgan Fairchild and Billy D. Williams, who are still friends today. They are still so lovely to me to this day. I served on the Screen Actors Guild SAG-AFTRA board. At the time, we were just SAG. With Morgan for 3 years. So we got to know each other even more. But I remember back in the day, because there were a lot of stuntmen because we were all terrorists, and like day 2, Paul Krasny, the director, obviously he was paying attention. And he goes, that kid, he's acting. I see him acting every time we call action. Bring him up here. And so he put me next to Morgan throughout that show. So as an extra, I got so many close-ups and so much featured work because Paul saw me doing my work, and that was a good lesson. But at any rate, yeah, it was one of those things where all of a sudden, here I go, I'm making money, even though I was, a featured extra on that, for 2 or 3 weeks making that movie, that paid my rent for 3 or 4 months.
Well, the next movie you did was called Trespasses.
Yeah.
And on the set, you met Julie Cypher, who was an assistant director.
Yeah.
And you guys ended up getting married the next year.
Yeah. Trespasses was a really interesting thing. We had developed a reputation in DFW and we were out at the studios at Las Colinas. So we were pretty legit, the Film Actors Lab. And Adam, God bless him, man. He was an amazing mentor to me. Adam had, been a studio contract player, did like Rio Bravo with John Wayne, and did like 5 films with Nicholson, a couple of which he had billing over Nicholson. And then he ended up doing a lot of biker movies with Dick Clark, and Richard Rush in the late 60s. He had done so many biker movies that a friend of his called him and asked him to do another, and he turned it down. And the friend was Dennis Hopper, and the movie was Easy Rider. So, King of the Biker Movies turns down the biggest biker movie of all time. So that was, Adam was just a font of practical, wisdom. So we were pretty well known for what we were doing in DFW. And this rancher had made a movie with, again, the film department at UT Austin. And Tender Mercies had just come out, and Robert Duvall had won the Oscar, for Best Actor in a role that looked like he wasn't acting at all. It was so natural and so low key and very, very reserved and very restrained. And exactly the kind of role which makes everybody think they can act, And so this rancher suddenly thought, okay, well, I can do that. And he mortgages his ranch. Well, the movie turns out terrible, absolutely terrible. But some distributor in Hollywood says, hey, listen, you put in a couple of fight scenes and like a rape or something, and then, we'll buy it. And so they come to us. And it was one of my first writing challenges. As I said, I had been developing the curriculum with Adam, so I was writing scenes and doing that, all that sort of thing in the screenplay, format. And I looked at this movie, I looked at all of the outtakes, read the script, and figured out how we could reshoot like a week's worth of material to get everything into that movie that we needed to. And it's so funny because Adam was like, Lou, the Kuleshov experiment? Listen, this guy is so bad, we're going to traumatize him so much at the beginning, so when he's walking like a zombie through the film, everybody will think he's feeling really deep emotions. So it actually worked, and it was my first screenplay credit. Met Julie. We dated for a bit. Actually married after I got La Bamba. So, And then she famously left me for Melissa Etheridge. So, I was that guy. Yeah.
Right, I was going to mention that. So after you guys got divorced, she came out as lesbian, and she formed a long-term relationship with singer Melissa Etheridge.
Yeah. She wasn't, it's interesting because she wasn't gay or didn't think she was, when we were together. If she had been bi or something, that wouldn't have made a difference to me. So, but the fact that it came out of left field was quite a shock, And sadly, Melissa and I actually talked about this afterwards. After about 10 years, she decided she was no longer gay. So in some respects, Julie was a bit of a karma chameleon,
Well, yeah. I mean, if you fast forward to 1994, you're in a movie called Teresa's Tattoo, and Melissa Etheridge is in that movie.
Yeah. Well, just to show that the split was amicable, in the beginning. I did that as a favor, to Julie. It was her one and only directing, feature film in Hollywood. So I did it. A few other people, who were friends, said yes to it. Melissa, was in it. And we were all still very friendly at that point. But after a while, I started realizing it was a bit of a one-way street. It was certainly time for me to move on.